now take questions and answers. There's a microphone in the middle, so if you can just stand up and.
This question is for Professor Ben Hazen. Is he still?
Yeah, right here.
Hi. Given the recent controversy surrounding homosexuals in the military, under Islamic law, if a homosexual person began to actually engage in homosexual relations in an ongoing and permanent way with no intention of quitting, then the punishment under Islamic law would be death, unless he agreed to quit. As a practicing Muslim, do you accept or reject this particular teaching of Islam?
Well, the question of rejecting and accepting teachings of Islam, really, I don't have a choice as a Muslim to accept or reject teachings. I go with what Islam teaches. Now, is Islam unique in that regard where the term alternate lifestyles is acceptable? No, it's not unique. This is also in the Judeo-Christian understanding as well.
Do you accept the teaching of Islam?
Let me finish. I'm a student of comparative religions, and I know that this is captured in other religions as well, that this is an unacceptable way of life, right? So, so the punishment in Islam, there are certain rules that govern the determination if an individual is homosexual and whether really they're caught in the act or who are the witnesses, and it's a long story. I don't probably have a lot of time to explain it. But you just cannot persecute someone just because you think they're homosexual, for example. It has to be clear proofs that show that situation.
If a person were to explicitly say, I'm a homosexual, I have no intention of quitting, the punishment under Islam, not under Christianity or Judaism, is capital punishment.
Is there a country that follows Islamic law?
Yes.
Okay.
About 52 or so, right? Sharia law.
So which country is that follows Islamic law? I don't know any country that follows Islamic law.
In Saudi Arabia, if you were a homosexual...
Saudi Arabia is a country that follows a mixture of laws, among which are Islamic laws, and among which are British laws, and among which are Napoleonic laws. There is no country in the world, to the best of my understanding, that follows Islamic law 100%. So unless you have a country, many people will tell you, unless you have a country that exercises Islamic law 100%, no exceptions, not following any other law. If you mix laws with other laws, then that doesn't qualify as an Islamic country.
Okay, well perhaps let me phrase my question this way.
There's a difference between Muslim countries and an Islamic country.
Under Islamic law, is it punishable by death if you are a homosexual?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's punishable by death.
Professor, I'm Jamie Hopkins, the CEO of the ROTC unit here. Thank you both for coming. This is a great opportunity. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
One, you touched on something there that I having been over in the Middle East a little bit, I think sometimes two things, and I'm curious how you approach this as far as the education side goes. That one is that we as Americans, and no disrespect to the Arab nations over there, but we tend to equate Islam with Arabic. And when in fact, in the greatest part of the world, the Arabic countries make up a minority of the Islamic countries. How do we approach that? And then the other side of it is that frequently government structures, political structures that we may not agree with tend to get lumped as Islamic structures when in fact they may or may not truly follow Islamic law. So how do you work your education in those areas, and how do we as a country address them?
Right. Unfortunately, today's presentation, I had very limited time, but one of the things that I always present is the same point that you just asked, which means that not every Arab is a Muslim, first of all, and Arabic doesn't mean Islam or Muslim. There's 240 million people that live in the Middle East, and there's a good chunk of them who are not Muslims, and these are Arabs that I'm talking about. They're either Christians, or some of them are Zoroastrians, some of them are practicing Judaism or some other form of religion. So the majority of the non-Muslims in the world, 85% almost, are non-Arabic speaking Muslims. So they live in Asia, in Indonesia, Malaysia, and countries like those, China, and so on. So that's one thing that I always tend to cover, if given enough time. So today's presentation didn't have that, so I apologize. But yes, you're right about that. And I think your second question was the mixture sometimes of what is considered Islamic, and in actuality it might not be. It might be just a day-to-day issue in life, right? That's what you're asking.
And government structures that, you know, I think frequently we equate government structures that are not providing the rights that we in the United States perceive as being rights, when in fact that may not equate to Islamic.
Yes, because there are very strict criteria of how you can belong or fit into the term Islamic government. So Muslim jurists have looked at that a lot. And it's a very lengthy criteria. And really, if you look at that criteria and apply it to all the Muslim countries, none of them qualify, really. Now, there are countries that are close to that, but not quite there, like Saudi Arabia and so on, not quite there. So what we term as Islamic countries should really be called Muslim countries, meaning that you have majority Muslims who practice Islam in that country. Asia would be an example, Egypt would be an example. Malaysia is almost 30 to 40% other religions, but the majority are Muslims, right? And so a lot of these issues that take place, we need to be able to differentiate what really is Islamic and what is just a day-to-day matter of life. And a lot of that comes from learning, awareness, educating ourselves, and so on. I think I answered the question. Other questions, please?
First of all, I just want to welcome both of you guys for coming here. And this question is directed to Mr. Cox. With increasing religious diversity and pluralism in America, there has been recently a report I was reading in the New York Times about the strengthening of right-wing extremism. And I wanted to know, as an American Muslim, what do you think American Muslims could do to alleviate those tensions?
Stay positive. Seriously, some people in the world, you'll never be able to change their viewpoint of things. And it's funny that individuals who sit on these fringes, whether it be the Ku Klux Klan or whether you look upon them or Crips and the Bloods or any other organization that calls themselves trying to raise up other people, they end up harassing and intimidating the very people that they claim to want to save. And it's a hard question to answer. You know, I guess the cliched answer is love is the only thing that can destroy this hate. Keep smiling, brother.
Thank you so much, Captain Cox, right? Awesome. Thank you so much for coming by. So I just have a question. Recently, coalition forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, they've been trying to get, Muslim peacekeeping troops from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia to contribute to the mission there. But that hasn't happened so far. But yet what we've seen is a growing rise of Muslim Americans serving in the military and serving overseas. So what role do you think that Muslim soldiers and sailors and Marines have in places like Afghanistan and Iraq were they to be deployed there?
It can be can serve as the bridge to the cultural divide. If you have a young man that's of Afghani descent, he can tell you about things that people wouldn't pay much attention to, as little minute details. Being able to sit down with somebody and to break bread or drink tea and to have simple conversation. Not sticking your feet out in a certain way, or not saying something about somebody's mother. Small things like that will go a long way in helping to bridge the divide. It will also help in just getting a lot of things done. I don't know if I answered your question somewhat.
No, you're good. Thank you.